Hello, my name is Matthew, and I've been watching Friends recently. I've been watching all the reruns in order, and there's a reunion show coming out, I think next week, and it's going to be the full cast of Friends. And I thought I would just talk about the show. Friends is an American sitcom from the 1990s, and it's a group of six friends. We have uh, Ross and Monica, they are brother and sister. Uh, Rachel, which was a high school classmate of both of them. Phoebe, who was an old friend of Monica's. They were previously roommates. We have Chandler, who was a college friend of Ross, and we have Joey, who is Chandler's current roommate. And uh, Rachel and Monica live um, in an apartment together. Chandler and Joey live in the apartment across the hall. Rachel um, comes back into this world at the pilot episode where she um, is a runaway bride and shows up in the coffee shop with all of them, and she's still in her full wedding gown. And then the show is a series of um, great, lighthearted, easy little stories of funny situations that they get themselves into. As the show goes along, these dramatic storylines start piling on top, and so um, there'll be long dramatic story arcs set within short comedic um, episodes. And you can't really talk about Friends without weighing in on the relationship between Ross and Rachel and the infamous break or breakup that they had. And it's so interesting watching these now and thinking about the cultural um, influence that this had on day-to-day conversations in the mornings at work, or when you would get together with your real life friends, in the debate of whether or not Rachel and Ross were on a break. Watching it again, there's no argument. Ross was completely in the wrong. So Rachel had a job as a waitress. She just gets a job at that coffee shop, and she's not very good at it. And she gets an opportunity. She quits on the spot one day. She gets an opportunity to work at Bloomingdale's. A person at a little cafe that Monica was working at the time offers her a job. She's in a relationship with Ross, who had been in love with Rachel since high school. Finally, he has his high school sweetheart, the love of his life, the girl of his dreams, and they're together. Rachel comes home with good news. She met this person that's giving her an opportunity to work at Bloomingdale's. Ross is just beside himself with jealousy. It tells her and every other person that'll listen to him that all this person wants to do is sleep with her. He's giving her this opportunity just so he can have sex with her, which may or may not be true, but it doesn't ever address, Ross doesn't ever address a major factor in this situation, which is Rachel has choices to make. Just because someone wants to sleep with her doesn't mean anything. She's in a committed relationship. He doesn't see that at all. She's just someone that if anyone is interested in her, that's going to be a threat. And Ross's behavior is abhorrent. He's calling her incessantly at work, sending a ridiculous amount of gifts. He's showing up unexpectedly, completely unprofessional behavior, and demeaning. It's a really demeaning way of acting towards someone that you claim to love. Absolutely no respect shown from Ross to Rachel. And she's working late nights, she's never home, she's doing well, even though she got this opportunity. No matter what, she's um, showing her own merits and doing good work. And it's their anniversary. He decides to just barge in when she said that she was busy. She was at work. She's shown to be working, and he just wants to set up a picnic. He has a basket and bottles of wine. He's lighting candles. He lights the office on fire. Rachel has to throw him out, just saying like you're acting insane, which he is. They meet up later in the night. Ross is expecting an apology for this ridiculous, absurd behavior. Um, Rachel, meanwhile, is giving Ross an opportunity for him to apologize. Rachel goes, we need a break. We just need a break. Ross leaves, immediately goes to a bar, and has a one night stand with a near stranger. He gets caught, the whole thing blows up in his face. And as a viewer, we're supposed to see this series of events and think, well, who do you side with? It's insane. Ross did everything wrong, and not only should not ever have a relationship with Rachel again, let alone be friends with her again. His behavior throughout this really puts into question the ability for him to be friends with any of these people. And his behavior gets worse throughout the series. He's psychotic. Even when Ross and Rachel were together and they weren't having all this trouble with her new job situation, Ross had shown himself to have a horrible temper. There's moments where he's screaming in her face. He has like an event to go to and he needs everybody to get ready. Just screams at her relentlessly and thinks that that's okay. So those are my thoughts on Ross and Rachel. My favorite friend of all of them, is as far as the character and actor and storylines, is Joey. And Joey probably had the most unfortunate character development throughout the show. He starts as sort of a dim-witted, pretty boy that does well with the ladies. It's a really good counterbalance to Chandler, who is quick-witted, unexceptionally good-looking, just very forgettable, and doesn't do well with the ladies. And so they're roommates, and there's a lot of great comedic interaction between the two of them. Unfortunately, if you're a character that starts off kind of dim-witted, and all of these characters, their attributes get more exaggerated as the show goes along, that's a natural occurrence in most sitcoms, it is the most striking when you're the dumb one. At first, Joey just sort of wasn't very quick, didn't really read the paper. He was kind of a bad actor, a B actor that would get minor roles. Towards the end of the show, he's mentally handicapped. Like, he is completely absent of any sort of knowledge of anything. He cannot comprehend basic adult behavior. He's a moron, a complete and utter moron. And it betrays the character because early on, Rachel catches Joey reading The Shining, and Rachel likes Little Women, and they decide to exchange books and see how they like them. Well, the Joey of the later seasons, you couldn't imagine that he would be reading anything. And Joey is sweet and loyal. He's the most loyal of all of the friends. He has all of their backs no matter what. When many of the other characters will either lie to get out of a situation, or their first chance, the first opportunity for lying, um, they'll just lie on impulse. Phoebe is probably the biggest liar of the group. She's constantly lying as the first thing that comes out of her mouth, which is unfortunate. She's the quirky one of the group that has a storied past. Most of her humor, her portion of humor is non sequiturs, saying like a random thing. Um, Joey doesn't want to lie. He wants. There's moments where he's really uncomfortable, even hearing that there's secrecy going on. When Monica and Chandler were hiding their relationship from Ross, he just said, "Let's get it all out in the open." When he decided, when he found that he was in love with Rachel, he wanted to talk to Ross first. And the loyalty has so many great moments. Rachel gets yelled at by the superintendent, comes back into the apartment crying. Uh, Joey hears this and storms right out the door, goes up to the superintendent, goes, "What are you doing yelling at Rachel?" Of course, the superintendent then decides that he's going to evict Rachel and Monica, and Joey has to uh, uh, become his dance partners so the superintendent could woo the girl at the next like superintendent party that's in the city, and it's a whole thing. It's great. Um, Chandler and Monica, I felt like had a unfortunate uh, relationship. Chandler was always kind of a good guy, nothing to write home about. Monica, Rachel and Monica are these like show-stoppingly beautiful women living next to Joey and Chandler. And aside from all of the touching, all of these friends are constantly all over each other. When they sit together on the couch, they'll have their legs over each other. They're rubbing each other's chests. They're touching each other's hair. Um, Very little. Whenever that's happening, there's really no mention of how gorgeous the two of them are. But Monica does become sickly throughout the show. In the middle seasons, she loses, Courtney Cox loses so much weight that the bones in her sternum are like sticking out. You can see her shoulder bones, and her face gets sunken. And at the same time, Chandler, Matthew Perry, who's dealing with alcoholism and drug abuse throughout the run of the show, his weight is uh, fluctuating dramatically. He's gaining all sorts of weight and then losing weight nearly episode to episode, um, in a very unusual way. His body type doesn't change very much, but his face will get really fat. He'll have a fat forehead somehow. His forehead will enlarge and then shrink. And it's judgmental, but they really got together when the two of them were at their worst. And Chandler showed every which way his body type can look bad. Eventually, it's very judgmental, but eventually everything kind of evens out. They both look good towards the end of the season. They have the most healthy relationship that makes sense. Ross and Rachel being together does not make any sense. I think Joey and Rachel would have made a great couple. If it wasn't for his character just being obliterated in the last couple seasons, where he's totally absent, stupid, and can only make bad sex jokes or womanizing jokes or food. He likes to eat. Throughout the whole run, even when the plot lines get rocky, there's always great set piece jokes, those setups that they just like nail out of the park. Um, I think the run of the show suffers towards the end with the piling on of all of these dramatic storylines and the romances, and Joey loves Rachel and she doesn't love him back, and then Rachel loves Joey, and Rachel's having Ross's baby, and Monica and Chandler can't have babies, and they're going to be adopting. Rachel has a baby, and they have two babies, and Monica or Phoebe has something else going on, and the show never falters from the pattern of every 5 seconds there's going to be a one-liner joke, and so they don't give enough space to let the drama set in. Never mind of how ridiculous it is, and it's like a daytime soap opera. It never really meshed for me very well. It's hard to take it seriously. And at the end of this thing, when it starts coming to the conclusion, um, Monica and Chandler are going to be moving away. They're married. They have twins. Um, and Rachel gets a job in Paris, working for Louis Vuitton. Meanwhile, Rachel has an amazing storyline, starting off from being like a daddy's little girl that gets whatever she wants, to going into the city and operating independently and working towards a goal. Her character, she's incredibly sharp and perceptive, stylish, looks professional, aside from those kind of comedic pitfall things that will come up. Really worked towards a goal and felt believable that she is moving through her profession. And at the end of all this, Ross decides that he needs to get her back. And at the very end, there's the moment at the airport. Ross tells Rachel that he's in love with her. She gets on the plane. It ends with Rachel back in Manhattan at Ross's door, and she's not leaving for Paris, which was so disappointing. Ross does not deserve Rachel. He had years of opportunities to work on their relationship, and instead, just absolutely sabotages any chance for them to have a relationship, but also actively sabotages any chance of Rachel finding happiness outside of their relationship. It becomes a plot point where Ross is realizing that 5-6 years have gone by since they had been together. Of course, I love the show. It's one of the best kinds of shows that you can have on in the background. It's familiar. The majority of all the different storylines and situations are lighthearted and fun. You have all the one-liners from Chandler. Chandler, meanwhile, suffers from having to compulsively have a one-liner. For every one zinger that Chandler will have during the course of a conversation, he'll have 10 or 20 that just land like lead balloons. In the later seasons, he has to constantly comment about how awkward and pathetic and unfunny his jokes are, and try to have that meta situation where the humor now comes in with how bad was that joke. It just really doesn't work. So Joey's my favorite friend of all of them. Joey's my favorite friend of the guys. Rachel's my favorite friend of the girls. And it's great. And there's a reunion show which will be interesting to see. I watched the trailer, which came out a couple days ago, um, and they're all 20 years older. Interesting. They've been immortalized as the 20-year-olds of the 90s. Let me know what you think about Friends. If, if if you like the show, who your favorite characters are, if you have favorite moments. One of my favorite episodes is when Joey was building that entertainment center, nearly put a drill through Chandler's head when it came through the drywall, and he comes out and Joey says, "Did I get you?" And Chandler goes, "It's a power drill. If you get me, you kill me." And when they finally put it up, it was way too big for the apartment. It's hilarious, but the show's full of hilarious moments. So let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.